Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. He's talking to today's industry leaders and entrepreneurs about the people side of their business.
Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast, where we feature entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, and for the next 25 minutes, I'll be your host as we explore how to build your business through better hiring. Today on the program, excited to have Andy Medley, the co-founder and CEO of PERQ, located in the beautiful city of Indianapolis, Indiana. The business was founded in 2001, along with Scott Hill, a co-founder, growing like crazy, funding behind them and all kinds of great stuff going on. So we're going to be digging into that. Andy, welcome to the program today.
Hey, thanks, Adam. That was a very nice intro. I appreciate that.
So, you guys are doing a lot of things right as it relates to the talent side of the business. You were named to the Indy Star Best Places to Work last year. You have a web engagement product that won an American Business Award for New Lead Gen Product of 2017. So good stuff happening culturally, good stuff happened with value delivery. So lots of stuff to dig into. Before we dive in, though, let's set the stage. Give us 30 seconds or so on PERQ and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so the easiest way to think about us is that we are a marketing cloud for the considered purchase market. And the considered purchase market is expensive stuff where consumers are starting to spend and have been spending more time educating, researching to the point of decision, something that they're going to live with for a really long time. And for us, that today is automotive, so that's vehicles. It's furniture, so think big furniture retailers, and that's apartments, which we call multifamily. And so our job, because that consumer is spending all that time online, but the sale is still done face to face, our technology is meant to help our businesses engage those consumers more meaningfully on their websites and then provide additional solutions that hopefully increase the likelihood to purchase for those businesses by bridging that gap between the online and the in-person worlds.
So when you go to market, who's buying your product? Is it the individual operator, so the car dealer in the automotive case, or is it the brand like Ford or GM?
Yeah, we're going direct to dealers, and then we work through our partners. And so partners in this instance are a lot of agencies. But no, we're selling to Joe or Jill Ford in your local area. Typically, they need to have more than 5,000 unique website visitors a month for us to really make an impression. But that's kind of where we specialize.
And if listeners want to learn more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Jump on our website, perq.com, PERQ.
All right, so let's dive into the people side of the business. I mean, I'm struck by the just the level of quality and thought that has gone into your employment brand. I mean, you're really top tier as it relates to sharing with prospective employees what it means to work there. So if I go to your website, I click on the company leak. The first thing I see is a culture video. I see core values. I see cultural characteristics. And so I want to dig into all of those things. But how talk about the evolution of your employment brand as it appears here on the site. I mean, this isn't a day one presentation of cultures. You put some work into this. Take us through that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it goes back to Scott and I starting the company, and really, we were 24 when we started our first company, and it was time to hire, and that kind of had us ask that fundamental question of what is that? What's our company? Because up until that point, it was he and I, and we're sitting on the porch and getting ready to have our first office, and that led to the kind of a foundational question for us, which was if we weren't in this spot where we were starting and building a company, what kind of company would we want to work for? And Scott and I, two gentlemen that are very competitive and yet not lacking the traditional talent to play professional sports, but love the game and really looked at business from that perspective. That it was our way to be professionals in something because golf or basketball sure weren't going to happen.
Right.
So, once we started to kind of go down that path, it made it very apparent for us what the pieces were that were going to be necessary for us to put into play and start to go out and recruit our team and make sure that they understood their roles and more importantly, the game that we're trying to play and how you win.
Let's talk about your values. I mean, listeners to this show know how know the level of importance I place on values as the blueprint for doing everything that you just described. Your values they're very specific and feel again like a lot of thought went into the just the wording and the way they're presented. Take us through those and why those values for your organization.
Yeah. So we've had the same, at the core, the values have been the same: commitment to community, game on, smart growth. And these are things that but how we talk about them have actually evolved a little bit as we grew. And more specifically, as we realized in the first 5 years, maybe we were getting a little further away from them and we weren't talking about them or using them as kind of the rules of our game, which is how we think about core values. And so what we did is the evolution is that as Scott and I first sat down and kind of wrote some out, and if I told you the originals, I don't think I could even say specifically how they were worded. But 5 years later, we engaged the entire team and had groups of three that took the original core values and morphed them into what they were today. And along with working with the executive team, more specifically Scott and I, did a better job of defining them. And that kind of recentered and put us back into a position to where we put them right back into the middle of the organization and then started to build pieces around them because we had certainly, while we launched with core values and always kind of the characteristics to who we are as people or who we are as a company, we definitely got away from them a little bit in terms of making sure that they kind of kept us centered. And so that threw it right back in the middle of the ring and allowed us to kind of keep moving forward and always looking to those to guide decision making into the creation and growth of our culture.
So here on the company page, I see the values, and I also see cultural characteristics, which you describe as the winning formula based on four characteristics that team members at PERQ embrace:
Yep.
magnetism, grit, savvy, competitive greatness. And so it appears that you've taken those values and you've also enhanced them by describing behaviors that you look for in prospective employees. Um, Share
Yeah.
with us your thinking there.
Yeah.
Why is this an important part of the value proposition?
Well, so if you came into our building, um, and we've worked really hard, we call it our stadium, to make it, you should have a feel. There should be an energy, and that energy should either draw you closer, especially if you're a potential recruit or a candidate, um, to our building or I mean to our team, and you should understand the culture just from the feel. And personality traits is kind of how we talk about the four that you just described are in a pretty big element of that we layered in around 2013, 2014. And the reason for that is that as we started to continue to figure out how to embody our core values even more, um, I'll use commitment for community, for example. Most organizations have that as a trait, some form of community or giving back, or said, probably multiple ways. But you could be the gentleman that donates $100 million or $20 million to the hospital anonymously, and I could be the one that donates the same amount, and I put my name on I want my name on the side of the hospital named after me. Both are totally okay, right? And both are certainly giving back to the community, but which one are you and which one are me? Which one am I? And more specifically, in this instance, like, what's it mean for the company when I walk in as a candidate or I am working on this team and I look at the core values? How do we exude those as PERQ? And so we spend a lot of time focused on thinking about those personality traits and how they directly correlate with the core values, so that you as an organization, as an individual coming inside of this organization, can understand that this is the kind of team that you're joining. And more specifically, that when you're exuding these type of things, right? Magnetism is the idea that when you when you and I meet and you leave, hopefully you have more energy and you've learned something. Because I'm passionate about what I do, and I care about what I do, and I try and educate myself on that so that I'm an expert in it. And it's a good reminder. And so all those personality traits directly correlate with the core values, but they help you understand as an individual inside this organization a little bit more about what it is that we're trying to accomplish and how to exude how to act in every interaction, whether it's internal or external.
Let's take this all the way back to the beginning. I mean, you referenced in the core value discussion a few minutes ago. When it was time to hire, you knew that these things were necessary to define. Talk about that first hire. I mean, what was your process then, and what does it look like now, and how is that learning taken place from then to now?
Well, first off, Adam, I would say that it's it's probably way better now than it was
Uh-huh.
than it was then. And I will be the first to admit that I am a terrible interviewer. Uh, when you're a founder, you're constantly selling your, especially in a startup, you're always selling what it is that you're doing and why it's going to be great. And especially when we were that age and having just started in Indianapolis in 2001, the idea of a startup, it's not as common as it was today. And so trying to recruit candidates and get them to work inside of the organization, our first hire was actually 4 salespeople. We decided to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, we were trying to find uh, four individuals right out of college. And Scott and I sat down and thought about some questions on what it might look like, that the characteristics of a good salesperson in our organization, which is kind of funny to think about today, considering that we were really guessing. But putting our best guess forward. And then it was a balance of both, kind of making sure that we saw whether or not they had, and today we would define that as grit and competitive greatness, whether or not they had that in themselves. And we did that by asking them questions. And some of the questions were probably embarrassing, and I shouldn't say them out loud. But one example was, and I don't know if we actually ever pulled the trigger on this in an interview, but brainstorming everything like, have you ever been in a fight?
Oh, wow.
Right? And if so, why? And this is coming from a guy that's never been in a fight.
Right.
But just to see what their reaction was, and if they said no, okay, hey, no problem. This is kind of when we were brainstorming what it would look like. Have you ever wanted to be, and why? And to see if there was a way for us to determine fire in the belly. And in an early environment for us, when there is no job description, I can write a job description for a sales role. Um, but it's really like, can you sit down and get to work and help me figure it out? And there's no direct playbook. The only 2 people that have sold so far are the co-founders, and you're not going to be completely on your own, but there's going to be a lot you're going to have to figure out by yourself. And so that was what Scott and I were spending a lot of time trying to do, is to figure out how you interview these first candidates, but at the same time the other half was selling and getting them to buy into the vision of what it is that we were going to do, and why they should take a leap on a 2 24-year-olds that were working in a 1,200 square foot of, I want to say apartment, but office space right above a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And these were, for lack of a better way of saying it, kids right out of school that had to go back and tell their parents where they were going to work, which is what we were thinking about because we were kind of so close to that. And so today it's obviously much more operationalized. There's multiple layers, including a culture step. But I'm probably being hard on myself. There's probably some very similar characteristics from the first time that we started interview to what it is today. But I know there's not as much selling today as there was back then.
Yeah, but I appreciate the humility you bring to that answer. I mean, it sounds like we started careers in startups around the same time frame, and I remember 2001. I mean, kids these days, as they say, have not seen a bad time in the U.S. economy for the most part, but 2001 was bleak, man. I
It
mean,
was.
that was the dot-com bust, and I remember having that conversation with my parents saying, "Yeah, I'm going to this technology startup," and they went, "Well, didn't all those companies go out of business? Like, is that like website? Is that a thing? Is the internet a thing?"
Yeah.
And so selling through that is hard.
It really is.
Pretty.
It really is. Yeah. And I mean, and there was probably the balance, right? They say that there's no better time to start a company than during a recession. And so the benefit was that these individuals that we were recruiting probably didn't have a lot of options. Because the job market wasn't grand in 2001.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you've got you graduate, with that liberal arts degree in a recession, it's kind of time to take stock. So
That's right.
I, I was that kid, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So today, what's your favorite interview question when you're thinking about a senior level hire? It's going to ideally create a lot of leverage for you in what you're trying to do at this stage of the business. What's the question you like asking more than any other?
Yeah, so if it's senior, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same. And so by the time they get to me, especially if it's senior, there is a lot more recruiting, right? As I'm sure you're aware. I spent a lot of time, well, had spent a lot of time until the exec team was kind of built out, getting, meeting people, kind of interviewing them through just the general conversation. And one of my favorite questions when it kind of gets down to the determining factor is, tell me what you want to accomplish here. And then if you can't accomplish it here, what do you want to accomplish in your career? And I think from that perspective, it gives me a broad stroke understanding of, while it's a seemingly layup answer, I want to understand vision. Because if you're a senior person that's going to be in the organization, taking control of a department or a division, you're taking it somewhere. And your ability to, especially if you answer that question within the confines of PERQ, that tells me that you've understood our strategy, you've understood our vision, and you are already starting to connect what you want to accomplish. If you're coming in as a VP and you want to be a CMO, I don't know, I'm making that up. You've already started to understand what's going to need to happen inside of our organization to put you in a position for that role to become available to you. And that in and of itself can lead us to an hour-long discussion as you start to outline things that tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about growth, how you're thinking about strategy, and tactics.
So your leadership team today, it's bigger than you and Scott, of course. Um, Talk about the team and how you've organized the oversight of all that you're doing, and just speak to the challenges of running an organization of your size right
But yeah, I like to joke that every day is hopefully the largest business I've ever ran. Um,
now. I love it.
Sometimes that doesn't feel like it's the case, but there's a lot of I'm saying problems. There's a lot of challenges in the idea of scale. And the first and most fundamental, I guess, to answer your question, so we have executives over marketing, client success, engineering, product, and sales, and those all those individuals roll up into me. Scott is very much the visionary and the product person. He is awesome at both of those things and strategy. He can spot and identify um, disruption in the market and how to fill that disruption, and that's what we're doing today. And so that's kind of how we're broken down, and each of those work really hard towards our overall goals. And as we scale, the most challenging part is that we constantly have to challenge ourselves. And more specifically, if we're doing our job, what we were doing 6 months or a year ago is now broken and it's failing. And therefore, the challenges that are in front of us today are a byproduct of our success in the past. And sometimes you don't look at it that way. You look at it as like, man, I keep getting my butt kicked and this isn't working and I'm frustrated and why can't this just get right? And I remind them it's because we grew over 100% and you build a process for 6 people and now there's 18. And so we're doing a great thing and thank God we have this problem. And I think from that perspective is that the idea in an individual in an organization, regardless of what role you're in recognizing that the challenge is not only having the ability to feel comfortable with the change, but figuring out ideally how you ultimately get ahead of it is one of the most important and one of the most challenging things because well, you don't always pick the right things to work on, and you don't always know what's going to become a challenge or what's going to be broken that turns into a hair on fire. And that's a lot of how we work as an executive team. Is I always start the exec meetings by asking people, all right, number one, burning, and then we kind of go around the room, and sometimes they're no big deal and that we know about all of them, and other times it's like, oh man, that's uh that's happening right now, huh? And sometimes you identify culture issues where the team might not be happy about a particular thing, and that gives us the opportunity to kind of take heed, and you just got to be honest with yourself about what's working and what's not.
So to be successful as a senior team member at PERQ, what in your opinion is the quality that is most important to generate the result that's required?
um, I know for me personally, it's self-awareness. And I know yeah, I could say you got to be a strategic thinker or you got to have big vision. I think some of that's all table stakes, right? If you're in an executive role in an organization or here, you've been vetted for the fact that you can run product and you can, you understand product management or you understand product marketing and the functions that are taking place from that perspective. Um, but the self-awareness, not only in a growing organization where a lot of times you're stepping in each other's backyards as executives, because you're growing and roles are continually being defined, and way we did something yesterday isn't necessarily the right way to do it moving forward. How you're engaging with your team, how you're engaging with your peers, how you're engaging with me, and recognizing during those engagements how you're being perceived. Um, is a big deal. And I know that sounds like it's kind of a touchy feely one, but if you're aware of the things that you're doing well and the things that you're not doing well and where you need help and where you should be helping, it solves a lot of the other issues. Because communication and dialogue and feeling comfortable being vulnerable are all a byproduct of being self-aware. And so that self-awareness allows a lot of the BS to just get moved out of the way and for you to have a real dialogue, a real debate, and get to the answer immediately, especially in a ever changing or ever shifting environment.
We're in the tightest labor market. I mean, certainly I've ever seen. We're just next door in Chicago. It's tight everywhere. Hiring salespeople right now is with any kind of experience is about as difficult as I've ever seen it. And so you know, to, luring people over is a function of a strong employee value prop. Which is to say, if I come to work for you, what's in it for me that's more than just the job?
Yeah.
Your EVP, it reads really strong. But for our listeners who might not be in front of a browser following along here, why would I work for you if I have two equally compelling opportunities in Indianapolis? Why am I working for PERQ? What's your pitch, and why would I say yes to you?
I would tell you that we as an organization owe you three things. The first is a compelling mission that you believe in, and it's a big enough problem that you want to solve and dedicate your time to it. The second is specific metrics and a specific understanding of how what you do on a daily basis directly correlates and directly impacts our mission and vision and hitting our annual goals, because that can get lost. And the more you understand that, that means that in what's inherent in that and the direct correlation of you more better understanding the overall strategy, and therefore you can run faster and learn more things. So if we can outline that, then you are going to be in a really good spot to further your career and to make some huge impact and have a lot of fun and a lot of autonomy along the way. And third is a promise to hire talented, like-minded individuals that are going to challenge you, keep you on your toes, and help elevate your game.
I love it. Um, as we round out our time here today, it sounds like a lot's going right. As you look critically at your organization, what's one thing to get where you want to take this business, needs to develop or be enhanced to make that possible?
Yeah, we were talking about the 2001 recession. The nearest one is still very near and dear to my heart. And if there's anything that I learned about going through 2010 to 2011 or whatever time frame we're calling it, for us it really started in 2009, is that it can all go away tomorrow. So you should take nothing for granted. And I think for us, in the context of this conversation, is really the idea of our culture. And we have a great culture that has sustained us from 0 to 100 plus people. But that doesn't mean that the same practices. I think the foundation is what needs to stay true, but the same practices aren't going to sustain us moving forward. In a growing organization, especially as you get bigger, things like career pathing become very important, and that's just not something you can do when you're going from 20 to 60 in 2 years. The career path is like, do really well, and I promise you there's going to be an opportunity that's going to show up, right?
Yeah.
But when you're going from
Sounds
100,
familiar.
yeah, exactly, right? And if you go from 100 to 200, it's okay. I'm now number 12 CS of 20, and I'm seeing that there are some layers inside of CS popping up. But what does that exactly mean? And so we owe it the same thing. I kind of, what my pitch is, we've got to figure out how we conceptualize that into a 200 person company or a 300 person company. Because if you do that right, then the reality is, like, all the vision and strategy that you want is executed by the team on a day-to-day basis. And so if you take care of them and they're excited about what they're doing, they understand their role in it, and they want to work hard because they see the benefits of doing so and winning the game, um, then the rest takes care of itself. So for me, the thing that I'm really conscious about is constantly evolving and looking at, um, is the team, and are they happy, and are we doing a good job of taking care of them, because they could spend their time anywhere, and they're choosing to spend it with us, and that's not something that we should take for granted.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the final word. You've been learning from Andy Medley, CEO and co-founder at PERQ. Andy, thank you, sir, for being with us on the show today. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I really enjoyed it.
All right, that is a wrap for this week's episode of the Best Team Wins podcast, where we feature entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, author of the book The Best Team Wins, which you can find online at www.thebestteamwins.com. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. You can find out more information about Adam and his book, The Best Team Wins, Building Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, at thebestteamwins.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.